And folks, there will be a chance to keep going, and I do apologise, this will feel truncated, but I guess it's important for us that we share across the way as well as up and down the way. So, thing one, and these will get more smooth as we go forward. I mentioned that the community has a, maybe I didn't mention this, the Iona community was founded in Glasgow. It's just a coincidence that I was born there too, but Glasgow, the biggest industrial city in Scotland, very like the cities of Manchester and Liverpool, with lots of Irish immigrants and lots of industry and a great sense of humour, known for its humour. In 1938, the economic crash and its impact was huge. In the south side of Glasgow, the River Clyde runs through Glasgow, and there's a very famous industry of shipbuilding on the Clyde. That industry was decimated in the 1930s. Govan Parish Church was the Church of Scotland, that's the National Presbyterian Church in Scotland. George MacLeod was the minister in that church. He had been an officer in the First World War, and as a result he had become a pacifist, having grown up as a very wealthy, entitled, upper landed gentry within the Scottish economic system. He decided that his ministry was to convert everyone to pacifism and to devote his life and his ministry to alleviating poverty. He found himself the minister in Govan Old Parish Church in the 1930s, when the recovery from the First World War was still immense and the rumours of a new war were emerging. He committed himself then in Govan, before any news of Iona came to light, to building a sermon in stone, if you like. That was the phrase he used, that through the people and the places in which we live, we are the living witnesses. We are those stones that will sing. He also coined a phrase, a demanding common task alone builds community. But it's not enough to decide to be community, we need to have a purpose and a focus. I'll say more about the community, but I wanted to put this story in the bigger, deeper context of a little bit of Scottish history. The two pictures are of Govan. This top picture is a bit grainy, but it's of 1920s, 30s Govan, the time that George MacLeod would have been the minister in that part of the town. And this is a statue to Sir William Pearce, one of the greatest shipbuilders in Scotland. And over the road is the church. And then below is 1960s Govan, south side of Glasgow, where there was still immense poverty. But I'm going to say a little bit about Columba and Moluig, about Donad, and about the notion of the thin place, which we've stolen from a number of other places. The Iona community is rooted in the land of Scotland, and Donad is this hillock that on the top picture you can see just bumpily on the horizon. On the bottom picture you can see me there for scale. This is the top of the hillock. It's said that this was the place where all the kings of Scotland in the period around what we call the Golden Age of Celtic Christianity, the 4th to the 7th century, but a bit after that also, were crowned. This would have been a hill fort, a very easily defendable fort on this flat land of mid-Argyll. So Argyll is the county, if you like, in which Iona sits. This is a sacred space where the divine meets human, where the king was proclaimed the king of the whole of the lands of Alba, of Scotland, or of Dalriada, and also the divinely appointed king. So the cruciform, the holy and the mundane, the sacred and the secular, these two come together in a place like this. And it was on Donad that, there is an actual, if you go up the hill, you can see this massive, beautiful view out to the sea. And there is a rock on the top of the hill where there is the shape of a foot. And it is said that this is where the kings placed their foot symbolically in the land. Take off your shoes, you're on holy ground. And were crowned king of all the land that they could see in this wide vista. We have in our culture all of this wonderful lore and story, and having come here, I think maybe I treat it a little bit too lightly. I'm also wary of the notion of Celtic anything, because these folks would never have called themselves Celtic. The word Celtic simply means the outsider, and it was a word given afterwards, centuries later, to the people of this era, the 4th to the 7th century, who would have simply called themselves Christians. They were a Christian country at this point after the arrival of Columba in 563, so it straddled the time of Patrick getting to Ireland and of Aidan and Columba, and that golden period really finishes around the time of Aidan's death. That was a period when the monasteries flourished, when the notion of divine right of kings was prevalent, when Columba would have come to these ceremonies in his period and would have crowned the king, when people like Moluag and Columba fought over a bit of land, and it said that Moluag chopped off his thumb and threw it ahead of Columba in the race to land on the island of Lismore, so that he could say he claimed the right to the island. We have lots of these amazing stories from that period. But primarily they were Christian communities. There's a chap called Ian Bradley, whose book I commend to you. He's a scholar, an academic, who's written a book called Following the Celtic Way. The quote is up, the citing is up there, and he lists 21 characteristics of that golden age of Celtic Christianity. They all begin with the letter P, bizarrely, but it's a beautiful and thorough examination of what we mean when we talk about Celtic Christianity from that period. He says, if you want to look for eco-feminism, don't look to the Celts. Look to the Anglo-Saxons. The Celts were living on their land, but they weren't particularly concerned with, in this period, with the revival of the land or with honouring the land. They simply lived close to the land because that's what people did. 3 of them I will pick out: prayer, penitence and pilgrimage. Bradley says that if you want to really understand the Celts in that period, they had tight use of words for prayer, very tight analogies and images. So few words and beautiful creative images. They were really into penitence, standing up to their necks in the cold Atlantic Sea, mirroring what the Egyptian monks would have done who brought Christianity to Ireland, but their sea was slightly warmer than ours. Nevertheless, that's what they would do. And in Iona, we reflect this thread by, every day in our morning worship in the Abbey, we confess our sin and we request God's forgiveness of our sin. We recognise the need to say sorry, and that the stories of sorry are nestled deep within the folds of forgiveness, and we remind ourselves of that daily. And pilgrimage. Bradley would say that if you want to ask what did the Celtic Christians do, these are 3 of the things. Pilgrimage, they walked out and they came back. They walked out with their faith and came back to restore. There's much more to say about Celtic Christianity, but primarily these individuals would have called themselves Christians. And so my question to you, just a brief check-in, would be, consider the ground on which you stand now, whether that's right now, if you live here, or wherever it is you call home. To what extent is your ground holy ground? And what does that concept mean to you today? Again, just a very brief checking in.